Hello. So I am finally here with a book review like I promised 2 weeks ago, also probably a year ago, but then I forgot about it. Today I'm going to be reviewing Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim. Scott Heim? Scott Heim. And I'm really excited because this is actually one of my favorite books, possibly my favorite book of all time, which is tricky because I feel like when I categorize my favorite books, I do favorite books from my childhood and then favorite books from when I was a teenager to favorite books now that I'm like a young adult or whatever you want to call it in my mid-20s. I read this pretty recently, maybe in April, and I have been obsessed with it pretty consistently since. I think about it almost every day. And I wrote a little outline here in my fun carrot notebook. So to start all this out, I'm going to read the back paragraph. It seems a little long, but it all has pretty relevant information to the book. Also, just a disclaimer, I'm going to be starting this by reading the back of this book, and then from then on it's going to be big spoilers because I want to talk about the plot and the characters in like a full in-depth way. So just so you know, if you want to read this book and you mind spoilers, definitely log off of the video after that. But for now, we are going to read the back of this book. At the age of 8, Brian Lackey is found bleeding under the crawl space of his house, having endured something so traumatic that he cannot remember an entire 5-hour period of time. During the following years, he slowly recalls details from that night, but these fragments are not enough to explain what happened to him, and he begins to believe that he may have been the victim of an alien encounter. Neil McCormick is fully aware of the events from the summer of 1981. Wise beyond his years, curious about his developing sexuality, Neil found what he perceived to be love and guidance from his baseball coach. I was a kid in school who was like, don't let them read. They're dyslexic. They can't read. So the good thing I'm doing book reviews now. Now 10 years later, he is a teenage hustler, a terrorist of sorts, unaware of the dangerous path his life is taking. His recklessness is governed by idealized memories of his coach, memories that unexpectedly change when Brian comes to Neil for help, and ultimately the truth. So, spoiler alert from here on out, it's a big plot point of the book that kind of gets revealed, honestly, in the beginning, but like I feel like what is a mystery to Brian in the whole book is not a mystery to Neil because he knows what happened. So spoiler alert from here on out, just so you know. Alright, so this whole book is essentially about these two boys who got molested. And the whole thing is that one of them remembers and one of them doesn't. And like Brian, who's the alien abduction kind of one, really has fabricated this kind of story in his mind that the things that happened to him were the result of some like freaky, like extraterrestrial like situation, versus Neil, who fully remembers what happened to both of them and what happened not only to both of them but also to multiple other boys in their town, because this man who hurt them was their baseball coach. And it was really sad. I'm going to put this down because it's just going to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the side of the screen the entire time if I don't. So, what it kind of explores, what this book is all about, is just about the different ways that we process grief and trauma. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was really well done. I think the subject's handled very well because, just side note, I've mentioned this in a few videos, like, I've had a lot of traumatic things happen in my life, and very particularly I was molested as a child. So the thing is, like, reading a book kind of about how your brain does like a lot of intense, like unexpected things to kind of get you to forget, but then also to remember in different ways. It's explored in the text and I really like it. So let's go to my fun outline. Read the back of the book. It takes place in a small town, which I really like. I feel like a lot of gay narratives, which just so everybody knows, it kind of mentioned it a little bit on the back of the book, but Neil actually is, like, he's gay, and his whole thing is that he misconstrued what happened to him as a child as something that he wanted, because his whole thing is like, oh, I knew I loved men or I loved boys from like a very young age, and the coach saw that and acted on it, and he was just trying to show me like how to love another man, when really he was a child and the coach is literally like a 30-40-year-old man. So it's very scary. It's like, but it's sad because I feel like to a certain extent, like when it comes to like being a victim or being a survivor, I really don't care for the language that exists around a lot of talk about like rape or sexual assault. sometimes you think that you love, or not you can love, like sometimes you think that you love your abuser. Sometimes, sometimes you think that what happened to you was done to you as an act of love, or an act of like, I don't know, like genuine desire or whatever, when really like you're a child, like you don't know better. So like it really goes into that whole like side of the traumatic experience, and I think that's, I don't know, it's so well done. I'm gonna keep saying this throughout the video. I think it's handled very well, and I think it's handled realistically versus this whole like linear narrative that I've seen presented, where the perpetrator is either seen as inherently good but just did something bad, or inherently bad and just is this big evil supervillain, when in reality, like, the people who do these things to other people, who do these things to children, like, they're definitely, like, they're evil, like, they're fucked up, but at the same time, like, they are people, and I think putting them into this good bad binary, like, kind of takes away their agency and takes away the fact that, like, they're people who can make their own decisions, and they chose to do this to somebody. Like, I think that they really kind of go into it in this, you know, in this book, and I really thought that was impressive. But I'm gonna give my full opinion later. For now, I just want to talk about the premise. So it takes place in the small town of Hutchinson, which is in Kansas, and the book is told through different narrators. So the characters are Neil and Brian, of course, who are the main characters, who went through this traumatic event together. And then there's Wendy, who is Neil's best friend, who kind of adds this layer of an outside observer seeing this bizarre, like, really messed up behavior from a child, like, and just kind of, they're both kids, like, they're both the same age, but, like, it's like when you are a kid and maybe you have a friend, and, like, the friend's been through something, and, like, the friend is very much displaying and, like, showing that they've been through something traumatic, but you don't really know what to make of it because you're also a child yourself. So you're like, this is definitely wrong, but I don't know what to say to you, or I don't know how to react to the things you're doing as a result of the trauma. So, like, I'm just gonna kind of try to process it with you, but also not fully understand, like, what the hell is going on with you. So I thought that was an interesting layer to add. And then the last character perspective is this guy named Eric, and he's this kid who moved from California. He's also gay. He moved from California. He comes to this town in Kansas because, spoiler alert, once again, like, his parents, I'm pretty sure, died in a car crash. That's what happened to him. So he's living with his grandparents now. And he is seeing Neil and meeting him not as a child, but as a teenager. So it's kind of the perspective of Neil, not only just as this, like, kid who, you know, is your friend and who, you know, is, oh, that's just the way he is, he's just kind of messed up. Like, you're meeting him as a teenager, and you're like, oh, like, this kid clearly has problems, but you don't know what the root of the problems are. So I thought that was an interesting, another layer of kind of perceiving Neil and, like, you know, seeing what is going on with his life and why he is the way he is. So ultimately, I feel like as much as Brian is also a main character, Neil is the one who gets the most attention, in the way that, like, he's the one who gets multiple perspectives of who he is and why he is. Versus Brian, where I think for, like, a chapter or two, you see his sister's perspective of, you know, how he's growing up and what's going on and how everything's affected him in life. But overall, like, you're just getting his own perspective on himself, because, like, his story is very introspective versus Neil's perspective, which is very outside looking in, versus from the inside looking out at the world and figuring out where you fit into it. So the themes of this book include, I hate saying it as a theme because it sounds really weird, but, like, a large part of the narrative is that it's a gay narrative. Like, it's one of the characters is confirmed gay, the other character, you don't really know with Brian, like, it's not that, I feel like it's less so about him being gay or straight or whatever. It's more him just straight up being, like, traumatized by sex, and, like, he gets these nosebleeds. Like, that's a plot point where, like, he just gets nosebleeds when he gets really, really stressed, and that includes, like, you know, right after, you know, everything happens with him and the coach and, like, Neil, because, like, it only happened once with him, where with Neil, he was, like, groomed throughout an entire summer, and it's, like, really messed up. But he gets these stress nosebleeds from, like, the time of the event onward, and he does not know why, and in his mind it's like, oh, it's because the aliens put a probe up my nose, and, like, now I'm just having a physical reaction. And it's like, no, man. Like, you are traumatized, like, and it's not just by some, like, supernatural, like, being, like, a real life person like hurt you, like he did this to you. But it's easier for a lot of people to believe that something really out of the ordinary happened versus like fully accepting your trauma. So like sometimes people will like, not to say that like people like victims of trauma are like making things up, but like sometimes your brain literally is just like, I cannot deal with anything that's happened to me. I cannot deal with like the actual events, so I'm going to make up something that makes more logical sense to me rather than accepting what's happened. So he really like he's going through like physical, mental, and emotional pains because of the molestation that happened to him. And that's kind of explored throughout the book. Like the aftermath of trauma is definitely a theme. Going back to what I was saying before I literally cut myself off. I think gay relationships and the exploration of like, sadly, like kind of how like gay kids can get taken advantage of it in a very specific way, where people will see that like, oh, you're gay and but nobody will talk to you about it. Like you're a kid, like maybe it's not even sexual, maybe you just know for a fact that like, oh, you're gay, you're lesbian, you're bisexual, whatever, like let me show you, let me help you by hurting you. But in the kid's mind, it's not hurting because the person is paying attention to them and they're caring about them and they're listening to them in a way that maybe other adults don't. And it really shows how open like gay kids are to like grooming in a way, like not just children, but also like Neil grows up and he literally becomes a hustler. Like he becomes like a gay sex worker because in his mind, like love is getting taken advantage of by an older man and an older man desiring him. So he just continually throws himself into this loop of creepy older men who like want to have sex with him. But in his mind, because of the coach and whatever, like everything that happened to him when he was a kid, he's just like, oh, this is so like, this is love, like this is normal, like this is like exactly what I want. I love being wanted, like this is what being gay really means. And it's very sad, and I can recognize myself in a lot of those patterns, which I'll get to later in a second actually. Other themes in the book include familial dysfunction and then also negligent parents. And the tricky thing is, like, I feel like Neil's mom, she's a single mom. She kind of is portrayed almost as like a childlike character where like Neil straight up is just like, I will never tell her what happened with Coach. I will never tell her that I got used by this man who she trusted me with, because the thing is, I'm pretty sure she drinks a little bit, like pretty frequently, and she likes to go out and party, and she likes to have fun, and she likes to be young, and like as much as she loves him, she really loves him as like a friend instead of a child. So she doesn't really take responsibility for him or take care of him. She's always out with some different guy, and like, I don't know, she like works as like a grocery store clerk or something, and like it's not saying she's like evil, but she's just very like not a great mom, but still a decent person, but also ultimately just fails her son in a lot of ways. And then when it comes to Brian, his parents are always working, like they're always busy. His mom, I'm pretty sure, is literally like a prison security guard. Like she's that person who like stands in the tower with the gun and like keeps an eye on the walls or whatever. And then his dad is just some businessman. I don't know, he's very generic. Like it's interesting the way he describes his dad, because like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which I'll talk about later, but especially in the book, is where like his dad tries to call up and be a typical bastard dad and be like, hey son, I know I've missed the last 5 birthdays, but I got a present for you, champ. I promise I'll be there this year. And like literally like Brian's like sitting there like on the phone, and like I think he's a little drunk for the first time in his life, and he's like, listen, you better shut up and never call this house again because I hate you. And like it was really good. It was a good one. I thought that was a really good scene because it was very cathartic. It's like to every deadbeat parent who legitimately just does not even try and scares the shit out of their kid by pressuring them in whatever way and then telling them that they're disappointing, like, you fucking suck. Like, you're part of the problem. Like, so I like that by the end of the book, Brian kind of starts to face reality and live in reality instead of literally chasing UFOs and aliens and all this stuff. He starts to really realize that, like, real life happened to him and he can be in real life without getting hurt so badly. So I don't know, I thought his character arc was really interesting. And then with Neil, like, I've obviously spoiled the book a little bit, but I'm not going to spoil everything that happens to him because it's crazy and like it's a lot going on at the same time. So ultimately he has a traumatic thing happened to him. Like, he gets really hurt by another man, because the whole thing is that, like, Wendy and Eric are collectively very, very, they know about the hustling. They know about him going out and, like, finding other men and, like, doing sex work and everything. But, like, and they're worried about him. They tell him, they're like, you need to stop this. Like, you're gonna get killed. And also, this book takes place during the time of, like, the height of the AIDS crisis, like, in the 90s. And he just doesn't care. He's like, okay, well, maybe I'll get it and I'll die. Who cares? I'll never see Coach again. I'll never, like, be of any value to anybody unless I'm having sex with them. Like, what? Like, he's very self-destructive. And I thought that was, like, a realistic way to characterize kind of how he's going through and experiencing and dealing with his trauma. Also, sorry, I've been looking to the side the entire time. My rabbit has been eyeing this fence that I have between the rest of the house and the kitchen, and she likes to rattle it sometimes, and I just need to record this video as fast as possible so she does not start making crazy noises in the background. So yeah, I love the writing style. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's very straightforward. I like that it is told as if you are there. Like, it's not really, there's no frills, there's no real solid, like, big poetry or poetic moment. Like, he just says it like it is. He's literally just, like, describing what's happening and who's there and what they're wearing and what's going on, and, like, it's just very realistic, and I appreciate that. It's very much, like, straightforward storytelling. And it's funny, the book I plan to review next week is very poetic, and I enjoy it, but in this case, concerning, like, the actual story itself and the way that the characters are and the way that they're portrayed, I think the writing style matches up very well with the whole, like, story of Mysterious Skin. So, what do I like about the book? Everything. But let's get more into that. I like that it's so honest. I like that it doesn't shy away from what happened. I'm gonna be honest, like, I would put many, many warnings or just notices. Like, if you want to read this book, there are graphic depictions of sexual assault, and particularly childhood sexual assaults. It's sad. It's like you read it and it hits you in the gut, because, like, he doesn't, like, sugarcoat it like, oh, and then, like, everything went black and then I woke up and I realized this had happened to me. Like, no, it's straight up like, this man, like, hurt these kids in a very specific way, and he groomed them. Like, he did all these very specific things because he knew what he was doing. And the whole thing with the coach is that he goes from town to town every single summer and does this in a different town, and he gets away with it because nobody suspects him, because he's a very straight looking, also known as, like, not what people would expect a gay predator to look like, or a predator in general, because he's, like, a very straight-laced all-American dude who's just single and coaches baseball, so you wouldn't expect it from him. Versus, of course, there's, like, the stereotype of, like, the effeminate gay man who's, like, preying upon, like, children and straight men and everybody. Like, it's, which is disgusting, and I could make a whole video about that too. But yeah, it was a very fast read. It was an enjoyable read, but it's a very heavy read. Like, it'll hit you in the gut. Like, if you've had any experience with, like, sexual assault or any experience with any sort of traumatic event that leaves you functioning in a way that people don't entirely understand but is normal for you, like, you'll love it. You'll be like, damn, call me out. Like, that's real. That's me. That's who I am. And that's how I felt reading the book. I was like, okay, we get it. Like, we get it. You spied on me my entire life and you wrote this book about it. Like, it's a very well done book, and I like that it's not very eat, pray, love, you know. It doesn't spare feelings, and it's not, like, dressing things up in, like, purple prose, and it's not, like, dancing around the topic. Like, it goes in and it gives a very detailed description about what can happen to you as a, like, long-term result of trauma, and I thought that was very good. Alright, the last point that I'm going to make, or the last thing I want to talk about, the movie. Part of the reason I found this book is because I saw stills of the movie on Tumblr back when I was still on Tumblr frequently, and it's a gorgeous movie. Like, they really did a great job. All the characters look accurate to the way that they're described in the book. And it's like part of this whole movement of, like, new queer cinema, which is this whole thing that I'm pretty sure from the late 80s to, like, the early 2000s, there's, like, a big, like, just overall, like, outcropping or outpouring, I know those are two different words, but it there's like an outcropping of movies and an outpouring of movies. There you go. That just very particularly like featured like LGBT characters in a very blatant way. So like one of them is Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, which is about a bunch of I'm pretty sure it's a bunch of gay guys and trans women like getting on a big like bus that's nicknamed Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and it's like a whole thing, and like going on a big adventure. And then there's Mysterious Skin, which is of course about everything that I just described. And then there's Brokeback Mountain. So like all those movies fall into the category, and I'm kind of planning to watch through all of them. Also, there's My Own Private Idaho, which was very disappointing to me, which I could make a whole nother video about, because everyone loves that movie, and I think aesthetically it's beautiful, but realistically, I want to murder Keanu Reeves' character. He fucking sucks. He's a class traitor, and I want to fight him. But that's a whole separate thing. But yeah, it's all these movies that are just about like, mostly from what I've seen. There's some lesbian movies, there's some movies about trans people, but overall, from what I've seen, the big ones that are well known are all about like white gay guys. But I like them. I think they're good. I like the aesthetics that they have. I would one day love to direct a movie that's about butch lesbians in the visual style of a new queer cinema movie, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a great book. It's a great movie. I would highly suggest that you watch the movie and you read the book. Maybe read the book first. I might have actually watched the movie before I read the book, but like, it's all pretty accurate. It's all very well done, and it made me cry a lot for a lot of reasons. And like, this sounds so silly, but something that I'm thinking I'm gonna do is I'm gonna link a fan fiction. It's like the most niche fan fiction ever. It's literally somebody read this and went, this needs more closure, and also it needs more character development, and also it needs to be even gayer than the original text somehow. And they wrote a fan fiction that kind of explores the relationship between Brian and Neil, and how like trauma can affect like, I don't know, like future, when you're trying to like have sex in the future and you want it to be normal, but it just can't be normal. And the fact that like relationships after trauma, like you go through something, like it's gonna be hard, like it's gonna be difficult, there's gonna be a lot of nuance, and people are gonna fuck up, and like people are gonna say the wrong thing, but it's like you can work through it together if that's what you want to do. So like, I think that's important. So I'm gonna be a fool and link a fan fiction down below that I've read literally maybe 10 or 15 times about Mysterious Skin. And I think that's about all I want to say. Hopefully this review made sense. If not, sorry. And if you've stuck through the video till the end, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon on Tuesday about whatever subject I end up talking about. Probably the whole, I've been trying to make, side note, I've been trying to make a video or plan a video talking in depth about how the Fitch scale is stupid, and how it was a meme and people take it way too seriously, and how a lot of non-lesbians seem to love it, and it makes me uncomfortable because it doesn't make sense for them. Like people are acting like being stone butch is an aesthetic and being high femme is an aesthetic, when really it's about sexual positions. People are fools. They don't know what's up, they don't know what's happening. That would be cool if they weren't loud about it. Anyway, now I will talk to you soon. I do that every time. I'm like, I'll talk to you soon, but also one more thing. Like, because I'm the uncle from the Jackie Chan cartoon. That's me. That's who I am in reality. Surprise. Taking off my mask, unzipping my loose suit. I'm secretly the uncle from Jackie Chan Adventures. Whatever. It's fine. Alright, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.